Awesome. So I was watching the Steve Jobs movie yesterday,
Oh yeah,
and it just kind of reminded me, you had popped in my mind because, with, can you talk about your company, how you guys started it, and and then how you guys were able to get to seven figures and just the whole story,
sure, man. So to clarify kind of where it was, about 10 years
your
ago, I
story.
was going to a bunch
Yeah.
of RIAs and Real Estate Investor Association meetings because one of the things I learned in my life is there is one common denominator against anyone who is wealthy, and generally they almost all, like 90% of them have real estate. And so I figured that was a good starting point. I think for all of us as entrepreneurs, the real estate is our first gateway into entrepreneur worlds. Like whether or not we follow through with it, I had one flip. That's about it. But whether or not we follow through with it, we always start there. And so I went around to a bunch of different RIAs and ended up having a whole bunch of people just trying to sell me stuff until I got to one with a guy named Chris. So ended up chatting about a bunch of people up, talking around, kind of see what's going on. My company at the time was a company that was an e-learning company because I had been in the industry for 10 years. So I went with what I knew. Introduced to Chris. He said, what do you do? I said, I'm an instructional designer, and which is technically the term that I used for the position that I had. Thanks to a whole bunch of background noise and him going in 17 different directions, what he heard was structural designer. Now, he had about 240 flips at the time and had one that was going badly that needed a structural engineer to help with a basement that was going wrong. That misunderstanding got us breakfast the next morning when I explained what I actually did. I create high-level training for, online for major companies. Finally got us breakfast and I started on with him, and that's how I became part of his team. And so 10 years after that, was able to exit from the company. I had a minority partnership, so it wasn't like I was a huge part, but I was part of building this thing. So what I learned really early on is you latch onto another entrepreneur who is much more successful than you are, you add value to them, and they will take you along for the ride. And you learn from the inside exactly how to build companies, exactly how to deal with large amounts of money, I learned more about real estate than I ever wanted to know. Because at the time when I met him, he had a show on HGTV that was a flipping show, and he needed an educational part of the back of it. So that's where I came in. So what I think that was probably the best move I ever made was to latch onto another more experienced entrepreneur to bring value to their team. And I was with him for 10 years until I left last year. And it was sort of a natural progression. Leaving wasn't, a bad thing. It was just here's where I learned I was ready to graduate and do things on my own. And so that's where I come today in the authority for it. So that's like the 3-minute version of my history.
3 minute version of your history. Wow, man. So when it came to your, just liking stuff, you've done something that's just truly amazing. A lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of people, a lot of entrepreneurs, they want to start companies, and, they all want to have they all want to have like the success story, but, why do you think some businesses or some entrepreneurs fail and like others succeed like you were able to?
The number one differentiator between successful and not successful businesses is your ability to deal with suck. That's really the biggest thing. What you see is about the top quarter, maybe 25% is the really good, hey, I got the Lamborghini, hey, I'm doing all this great stuff. What you don't see is the three-quarters of that underneath it that was, this failed. I can't make payroll. I've tried to hire people, totally hired the wrong people for the right job. You don't see what goes wrong on a day-to-day basis. And I think understanding you're going to screw this up in 15 million different ways. You are also going to have to address every single demon you walk into this situation with. If you have a huge ego, you are going to be really humbled. If you have money management issues, you are absolutely going to learn the hard way how to manage that. Understanding that you're going to learn a lot of very difficult lessons through this. You're going to become a very different person afterwards, which is good. A very different person than when I first started off almost 10 years ago in the entrepreneur world. But I think that's the one thing you have to understand that you're not always going to be right. Just because you can see division doesn't mean others will. And if you're walking with any sort of demons or any sort of problems in your life that you're not willing to face, you're going to be forced to face them. And it's how you handle that situation is going to be whether or not you say, look, this really sucks right now, but I know I need to handle this and I'm just going to do it the best I can. Or no, that's not a problem. Put your head in the sand, then you will fail. So I guess that's the one thing is that understanding this is not just about making money. This is about the person you become in the process. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. And then what do you think people can do, you get me, to change the trajectory of their business so that they can succeed. I know that yesterday I was watching the Steve Jobs movie and it just kind of reminded me of you, Andrew, which is pretty cool. What you
Thank you.
guys were able to do, and they kind of hired a guy named John Scholley, and there's a couple of things that yeah. So, what do you think people can do for to not suck, and everything's happening quick, and they're all trying to make decisions. Yeah, so it's like you have a lot of success, it's like a lot of people will never achieve the success that you have.
Yeah.
Like you walk around the world
Well,
and you're just more successful than a lot of people. And Mr. Chestnut, Andrew.
well,
Yeah.
95% of businesses fail in the first 3 years. The first 3 years are the hardest years for your business. And yeah, 95% of them fail in those first 3 years. I mean, that's the statistic. And I only think maybe 3 to 4% of people are actually cut out to be entrepreneurs. You have to have a very specific skill set, meaning you're cool with risk. You're cool with, not quite knowing where things are happening, but you're going to figure it out. There's a huge amount, so, but as far as turning your company around, there's a lot of different tactics and things out there as far as turning your company is around and all of that. Number one, though, mentorship. Find somebody that is smarter than you, hire them, and let them help you. And then listen. I've made that mistake before too. You know, Either do what I did, find another entrepreneur that has a need, fill a gap that they have, and then bring value to the table that way, or and or go out and find a mentor, pay them, and do it, and use their when you purchase a mentor, when you pay a mentor, you're not buying a service. You're purchasing their experience, and that's something that AI and a lot of things can't give you. They have already been through the hard parts. They can show you how to go through them. And I would rather have somebody with the experience any day of the week. It's like the friend of mine and mentor, Greg Reed, says there is a difference between opinion and counsel. Opinion means I have an idea what's going on. I saw it on the news once. I generally have a good, kind of a knowledge about this, that's the knowledge end of things. Counsel means I've been there, I've screwed this up, and I'll show you the 7 different ways I did so you don't have to do that again. AI can give us it can give us the first. We can only get counsel from somebody that's actually done it before. So yeah, 2 ways. On with another entrepreneur and kind of let them walk you through it, or hire a mentor and have them do it that way. Still get to the same end goal.
And then what would be, you get me just a couple of tips for on entrepreneurship so that people can so people can like whatever business, like let's say they just started, it's like, hey, I just registered an LLC. Oh, or they've been in business for like a while that that their business can actually just begin to like prosper, begin to succeed. Like they just make leaps and bounds in a
Yeah,
short period of time, or you get me,
it
they
never
begin
works
to
that
do
way.
that.
It
No?
never works that way.
Like
So I guess that's a lot of that we were talking about earlier, where there's like the 25% at the top and the 75% at the bottom. Everything will take way longer than you want it to, cost way more than you want, and will never go exactly the way that you think it was, no matter how well you planned. Understanding that that's part of this process. I had a deal today for a company that I'm helping to build now too, beyond mine. That one of the investors is just kind of sticking his feet in sticking his heels in, going, "I'm not budging, and we really need him to budge." And this was it's always a negotiation. We thought this was going to be done 3 weeks ago. It's not. So, and I guess that being comfortable with the uncomfortable, being understanding that you're not going to, having that expectation that yes, it would be awesome if things went well, and yes, sometimes they do, but that's very rare. And it's not usually the way that it happens. Usually it's after years and years and years and years and years, and then something finally hits. And then that's generally the way that happens. Yeah. So just understanding that, yep, you're going to do well if you, but again, it's going to take a long time. That's all I can kind of give. And don't be discouraged by that. This is part of the process. That's normal. Don't be discouraged by it. Keep coming back. You're going to figure it out. I mean, it's inevitable. You're going to figure it out. Yeah.
and then how can you begin? What happens if you don't figure it out? And they, like for a person, like when is the time to go figure it out? All right, cool. I like that. I think for that, I think they could invest in you information, whether it's like mentorship or books or something. Yeah.
You
Oh,
have a greater ability to work things out than you think you do. I think
or this podcast
most people
episode.
are like that. Exactly right. Exactly right. I think most people have a better, I mean, if you were stuck in the middle of in the middle of the desert with no water and no anything, you would figure it out. Like, I don't care what's going to happen, you will figure this out because you don't have another choice. And understanding that, I think that proves to people that you do have the ability to do this. You would go around and cut open a cactus and drink the water, whatever you have to do to make that work, you would figure it out. So the same thing for business as well. And so I don't think there really is a point where you should just kind of say, I'm never going to figure it out. There are times when you have to accept hard lessons and say, all right, well, I now, I've gone too long in this. Now I have to go and, now I have to make a difficult decision. I have to lay off my staff. I have to cut spending. I have to, eat rice and beans. The old Dave Ramsey, when you get tired of rice and beans, eat beans and rice. Yeah, there's going to be decisions you have to make, but you'll figure it out. And again, this process is messy, it's sloppy. Nobody really knows exactly how to do it properly for exactly what you're doing, and you're going to make a ton of mistakes. And so I would rather fail fast and fail often versus drag it out for years. Learn those mistakes, move forward, and now you're able to make those better mistakes. Now you're able to make different mistakes, but you don't make the same ones over and over again. Hopefully that made some sense to you guys, but that's really the ultimate goal is you're going to figure it out. You're going to make mistakes. Just be ready for it, accept it, move forward and say, okay, cool. I'm going to make a mistake. So I'm going to make this decision anyway. Let's see what happens. Yeah.
And then what about what about in dominating the market presence and being able to become like an authority figure? What
Yeah.
about, yeah. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. Now you're on to my other company. So my company is the Authority Forge, and that's what
The
we do is
cherry
we
on
help
top
entrepreneurs. Exactly. That's my
on the
current business
Sunday.
right now because I'm never not going to have a business I'm working on. That's not going to. I have a joke with a friend of mine that we're going to start a retirement community, probably somewhere in like Arizona, of just entrepreneurs, and we're all going to be building something. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's like we have dementia and we're building it in our head. We're still going to be building something, right? Yeah. No, the Authority Forge was built on a problem that I had, and I think that's the number one thing to think about whenever you're trying to build a business is what problem are you solving? And for me, it ran into an issue I had where I was trying to have people with social media and trying to get a podcast going, and trying to do a webinar, and trying to do all these different things to build a company. And I ended up finding myself in the position of chief everything officer. Like I was doing all of this when most of it was not in my realm. Like I didn't care. There were things I was really good at. I've been in the learning industry almost 20 years at this point, and I'm really good about looking at somebody's messaging and saying, here's the problems you have. Let's fix it. Let's clarify this so other people can understand it. So that's what I'm really good at. But now I'm doing social media posts that had nothing to do with, that were outside of my zone of genius. And I realize there's a lot of people that are in the same situation. Especially, I work specifically with coaches and I work with consultants. I love working with them. To niche even deeper, I work with usually fitness coaches, work with life coaches, and I work with anyone in the financial industry too, just because those are three things that I'm really good at. Um, and I realized there was this problem. And so I wanted to create a company that helped people to build authority. And so as I was digging into this, I kept looking at the word authority and thinking, what are people doing right now? And it's like, hey, I can do a webinar and that's going to save my entire company. Hey, this guy told me I need to do a podcast. So I'm going to do a podcast because that's going to save my entire company. And I realized these are all tactics. What people really needed was a strategy.
That's this
And
chick. She's making seven figures doing podcasts and like DMs, just podcasts and DMs with everyone.
yeah,
She's just doing that.
they work. I mean, don't get me wrong, podcasts work, but if
And
it's
she
not part of your
posts,
whole thing,
yeah,
yeah,
the
but it's
the
not.
what you were talking about, the videos online. She does that.
Yeah, yeah. But if it's not part of a higher strategy and you're just thinking only this podcast is going to, save my company, but you don't have it as part of a larger strategy, that's where the problem comes in. And a lot of times we're putting different tactics in. What we need is a strategy over that. And so that's where I step in, is I'm able to do that strategy side of things and show, okay, well, let's make sure that your podcast and your webinar and your keynote all have the same messaging behind them. All are, it seems like the same person, you have the same, you're going to this, you're actually hitting a pain point in your ideal audience, and that we've defined your ideal audience. And most of the time, people haven't done that. I've worked with so many clients where they're like, I have this podcast. I love doing the podcast, but I have no idea if it's actually getting, how to make the podcast bigger, how to make this webinar convert. And most of it comes down to that messaging and just people are trying to throw things at a wall and hope it sticks. And AI is making that worse because AI is a great tool. Don't get me wrong, I use it daily, but it's not good at the strategy side of things. It's not good at kind of making sure that you're sticking within your messaging. It's not really, there's some limitations there. And so it just amplifies chaos unless you have it all down to begin with. So that's really what I like to do. I like to help coaches and consultants to be able to install an authority engine inside their companies so that way they can stop being invisible and start being the known as the expert in their field.
Got it. And then that's going to be through what you were talking about, which is like the videos. Are there other things that pretty much are, you get me, or it's like, hey, on the outskirts, on like, it's like on like the modules, that's like, hey, on like the course overview for what it is that you do
So, no, so as far as the tactics that I
to
use,
work
yes, we
with you.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah, we use webinars, we use keynote talks. I also do TED talks. We do podcasts and funnels, all of the back end. We also do ads. So it's a full stop. Like I didn't want to have to send somebody off to here's this person for social, here's this person for ads, here's this person for this. I built a team around me who are experts at what they do, and they help build out this authority engine as well. Because again, my ultimate goal is I don't want coaches to have to worry about the marketing end of things or the authority end of things. I want them to worry about that one thing that they're really good at, and that's getting onto calls with their clients.
Got it.
And
Calls.
yeah, well,
That-
that's the one thing that we all go into coaching for. People go into coaching specifically because they want to be able to change the world. They have a passion for what they do, and they've been through a lot, like we talked about earlier in the podcast, where you learn from your mistakes. Now you're renting somebody else's mistakes so they can, so you can learn not to do it. That's what they're good at. They're not good at this other side of things. I mean, I know what that's like. I've been there trying to juggle 16,000 things. We want to take some of that off your plate. We're really good at this side. We want to help you out with it.
Wow. I don't know how to end the recording here. Here, give me 1 second. I'll be right back. I appreciate it's still recording somehow. Would you mind if we just restart like the Zoom? Like yeah, like
Um,
you end it and then like you get me and then like I